Going on, everybody? We're going to be doing another video today. This is actually going to be a video response to the YouTuber AtPeacePiece. He brought up a really cool topic, just kind of describing what knife steels he has in his collection. And when you actually acquire a collection, it is actually pretty amazing, the variety of steels that you acquire without even really thinking about it. And so, just as a disclaimer, I'm not a steel junkie. For those of you who don't know what a steel junkie is, that's pretty much the forum term for people who are really big into like steels. They want the newest steel, they want the premium steels, they like to have knives with certain steels for certain tasks. They're pretty much steel addicts. It's pretty much a subcategory of the knife addiction. And yeah, a lot of people are described as steel junkies. That is not me, just because my uses for my, from day to day, they don't require, the newest and most top-notch steel. So I'm not quite as partial to certain steels as others may be. But I'm just going to go ahead and give my take and my opinions on the steels that are in my collection. So all the knives you see in front of you here are all CPM S30V. Crucible Powder Metallurgy, that company makes all the S30V for the knives in the industry, to my current knowledge. But the difference between all these is that even though these are all S30V, they are all heat treated differently by the company. So just starting off here, we got a couple Spydercos. We got my Spyderco Military here in the peel ply carbon fiber, and it's CPM S30V. Apologize if this doesn't really pop up too well, blurry. Still plan on getting a better camera eventually. So, CPM S30V. I noticed that Spyderco heat treats their S30V very well, in my opinion. It's heat treated and harder than that of CRKs. One of the biggest complaints about Chris Reeve knives is that a handful of people don't like the fact that they heat treat their S30V so soft. Because in nature, comparison to Spyderco S30V, the S30V on Spyderco is a lot harder, and so it's a little bit more prone to chipping than that of a Chris Reeve knife, but it definitely gets a little bit sharper, and it stays sharper a bit longer, so edge retention's a little bit longer on the S30V of Spyderco knives, and that goes for the Sage 2 as well. I found that it sharpens a bit sharper, and it'll stay sharper a bit longer than that of the CRKs. But I mean, there's ups and downs. So with the Chris Reeves S30V, even though it's hardened at a lower Rockwell, the benefits to that is the fact that the working edge could possibly last longer than that of a harder steel, because if this is chipping, it's not going to cut very well. But on the softer steel, instead of chipping, it may roll, so instead of breaking steel off or apart, you're just going to kind of flatten the edge. And also the benefit of a softer S30V is that for some people, S30V is a harder steel to sharpen, especially if you don't have very abrasive sharpening kits or rods or stones. It's going to be more difficult to sharpen this stuff. And so with the lower heat treat, the softer heat treat on Chris Reeve knives, it makes it much easier to sharpen the S30V on CRKs. And that goes for large regular, small regular. These are all three are here, just S30V. Although I gotta update that these Sebenzas here are S30V. All Chris Reeve knives are now going to be using S35VN, and that's supposed to be virtually the same steel as regular S30V, but all of its properties are just slightly enhanced. Edge retention's better. The stainless part of the steel is, it's more stainless than this. And so it's very subtle differences, and it hasn't really been out long, so there aren't too many reviews on it yet. But from what people are saying from its properties and whatnot, it's just a slightly upgraded version to your regular S30V. Strider originally used S30V, and it was heat treated by Boss, and he's revered as one of the best, if not the best, person in the world when it comes to heat treating steel. And Paul Boss is his name. Although Strider used Paul Boss to heat treat their steels in the beginning, they no longer, Paul Boss has retired from heat treating steel, so Strider no longer has Paul Boss heat treat the blades themselves, but supposedly they've adapted his methods of heat treating, and so Strider's heat treat is supposed to be pretty much unsurpassable. and I have to say it actually is really well. Being honest here, I don't carry my S&G that often, so I haven't gotten that much experience with it to really compare it to my Chris Reeve knives or Spyderco S30V. But I mean, I have cut through metal with this knife, and it has gotten a few little microchips. But given that, this has a really solid working edge, even after the abuse I put it through. And so I do believe that, also the thickness of the blade as well kind of plays a part. But that, and the fact that if Strider truly is using that heat treat, was the method used by Paul Boss, then this is some really good S30V. And then lastly, we have the Buck Waimea, and that's a Tom Mayo design. And this one is actually a Paul Boss heat treat. You can see the stamp on there, BOS, and it's got the flame there. That's his insignia. If it is Paul Boss heat treated, it will have that insignia on it. It was also on my Tom Mayo TNT as well, and this heat treat is amazing. The Paul, I can really tell, and I don't know if it adds to it, but this blade here and also the Buck TNT, these are super ridiculously thin, high hollow grinds, so they literally just slice all day long. And if I don't know what degree this is, but if you can see that relief edge, it is fat, and that is just factory. So I think that also plays a part to why I think this knife works out so well. For steel junkies, it's one thing, but I mean, there's a lot of other factors that go into steels. S30V is basically common now. It is a common standard steel for most knives. When it first came out, it was a big buzz because it's an excellent steel. It really is. I think it really did pretty much set the standard for what knife steel should be at a minimum as far as quality goes for edge retention and stainlessness and the type of properties that it has. And not only does the heat treat play a big part in it, also edge geometry will obviously play a part, what type of grind the knife has. A high hollow grind is going to be a way better slicer. This, obviously you can see how thin this blade is, and you compare that to a Strider S&G, I mean, you just compare those edges, there's just no contest as far as, what's going to slice better. So it's not always just the heat treat, it's also the edge geometry of a blade that will determine how well a knife cuts and whatnot. But as far as edge retention and chipping and rolling, that's kind of what the big deal is with what type of steels you have. So that's my S30V. This is, I guess you can say, my preferred steel for knives, just because it's a really good all-arounder. It's not super difficult to sharpen, and it just lasts a very long time for my uses, which is light to medium use. So those are my S30V blades. Let me just move these out here. Out of camera. Next, I'll go over VG10 steel. Surprised I have these many in a VG10. I used to have a ton of VG10 knives because I was collecting Spydercos there for a while, but I've kind of grown out of that habit and just trying to stick to knives that I'm using. These are all my VG10 knives. This is really, really good steel. It's not per se better than S30V. I think the masses will agree that S30V is better all around than VG10. VG10 is also stainless. It's a bit softer than that of S30V, or quite a bit softer, at least in my experiences. When I edge pro the Delica, it seriously didn't take long at all. It was very quick to edge pro this thing, and that's partially because VG10 is a pretty soft steel. What I like about VG10 is that it doesn't really chip much. If it's gonna, if the edge is gonna get messed up by, hitting a staple through cardboard or whatever, it won't chip. It'll just roll. So the edge will just kind of flatten. So that's a benefit of VG10. VG10 is used on most of Spyderco's, more or less expensive knives. A lot of the FRN handle knives are gonna have VG10, and like the Dragonfly here, or you see the Delica, or your standard Enduros. These are all VG10. This is seriously more than adequate even for my uses. I really don't need anything past VG10, just a light touch up on a sharp maker and just keep it stropped, like you'll be good, depending on how frequently you use your knives as well. And then of course I have the VG10 here on the Crickets. I have not had to sharpen either of these yet. I do not use them a lot, but I have used them more than a handful of times, and they're still plenty sharp with a working edge. still cut paper. And the serrations are mean. Spyderco really does some insanely aggressive serrations, and they just bite all day long. And so with the VG10, that really adds a lot. And also a fun fact, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but if a knife has serrations, it technically adds length to the cutting edge because of all the dips and bevels. Compared to a straight flat edge, all these dips and bevels are actually adding length in a good amount at that. So anyways, those are VG10 blades. Not the, a lot of people don't really look twice at VG10 as being, it's not considered a super steel or anything super amazing, but it is a very adequate steel for the price point and does get work done. So that's those. Here we have Kershaw Leak. This one is D2, CPM D2, and this one, if you can see here, the darker color steel, that is the D2 steel. It is layered or sandwiched with a nice copper accent here. And D2 is a pretty awesome steel. It is a tool steel. They use it to make tools, and they've decided to try it with knives, and it's worked out well. A lot of people like D2. From my observations, D2 is a pretty tough steel. It's very hard. It takes a very, very clean edge. When you sharpen this stuff up well, it takes a very tight edge and just slices all day long. And the edge retention on D2 is very nice as well. The only problem about D2, and I haven't had any issues with this one, although I don't use this one too much to be honest, is rust. And that D2 is just not as stainless as some other steels. So that's the Kershaw Leak. I do rate D2 higher than VG10, and between S30V it's kind of tough. There's a lot of steels that will have similar properties and cut similar, but just the fact that this isn't as stainless, I'd probably prefer S30V just for that reason alone. Next we got my Spyderco Military with BG42 steel. Chris Reeve knives use BG42 for a while. There's a handful of knives from different makers that use BG2 for a bit. This is rather soft steel. BG42 is really easy to sharpen and touch up. I was very impressed when I first got this. This is kind of, in a sense, it's kind of similar to that of VG10 in the sense that it's going to roll rather than chip, in my experiences at least. And this thing is just really easy to sharpen. I mean, really easy. Obviously, again, with the softer steels, the sacrifice is that the edge retention perhaps won't be as long, but I found that BG42 keeps a really nice working edge. And really the difference between sharp and a working edge is that although a knife may not be laser sharp where you're just, slipping through paper and just watching it, fall off like it's a laser, it will still, cut through cardboard. It will still separate material, although it won't do it as cleanly. But BG42 I found I really like just for the fact that how easy it sharpens up. It sharpens up unbelievably well, and the edge retention is quite nice given the fact how soft it is and how easy it sharpens up. That's the BG42, carbon fiber peel ply military. Next, we have my Paramilitary 2 Spyderco peel ply carbon fiber, and this one's got the S90V blade. Now, a lot of people have been talking about this recently again. S90V was a huge hit with the military and several other knives like the Manix 2. And this is a hate-love relationship, S90V, for a lot of people. S90V is actually considered a super steel. They consider S90V a super steel, so a lot of people rate this far above S30V, your VG10, your D2, your BG42. They rank this amongst the top ranked steels, and that's just for its insane ability for edge retention. This stuff takes a ridiculously tight, keen edge and just will last and last and last. And that's because the hardness of this steel is extremely hard. I mean, really tough. And so, once again, I say hate love. The love is the fact that this thing gets stupid sharp and it lasts forever. And the hate is when the time does come for sharpening, this is supposed to be a big pain in the butt to sharpen. But, I'm semi-eliminated that factor by having an Edge Pro. But a lot of people say if you have a knife with S90V, you can pretty much turn, you can look away from your sharp maker, your Lansky kit, or whatever you have that are crock sticks, the sharpeners with the two rods. Anything with rods or stones, it's going to be a pain in the ass to try to sharpen this. And so I'm happy that I have my Edge Pro, because a steel of this hard, I would not have the patience to use a crock stick maker or freehand stones. I would much prefer a system with a preset angle, though I can just sand away on it, grind away. But with coming from factory, Spyderco does a great job with sharp edges. I don't have a problem with needing to sharpen this as of yet. It hasn't had enough use. I've only used it in the kitchen and for cardboard. Like I said, my tasks are light to medium, and so a super steel like this will last me forever. I won't need to sharpen this for a very long time. And that's another reason why I say I'm perfectly fine with S30V. It's nice to have steels capable of, the abilities that S90V has, but definitely not necessary. And lastly, my Sebenza Large 21 with stainless steel Damascus. A lot of Damascus is made with carbon, which is not stainless, so it will rust. But this is actually stainless raindrop Damascus by Devin Thomas. And this actually has some really good edge retention. It's not quite as good as the S30V on my other Sebenzas, but it definitely takes a very clean edge from factory, and it does slice very nicely. And I don't really have quite enough experience with this. I've not sharpened it yet or anything, but it is sharp as of yet, and it has been used, and so far, so good. And the only knife that isn't pictured is Spyderco Tenacious with 8CR 13 MOB, and that is definitely on the very lowest end of Spyderco steels, next to like BD1 in my opinion. And it's just very soft, it chips, it rolls, but it is super ridiculously easy to sharpen because it's so soft and kind of lower, quality. And it will slice all day long for a day. Once you use it for a day, it's pretty dead. Just a working edge after that, or a mauled edge. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Those are my steels. I realize this is a really long video, probably my longest, but just putting in all my experiences and thoughts on all these steels here. Alright, guys, take care.